as you say, and you gave one particular example that's about tefillah, you know. And I have a son, Ron, who can see it fresh every day. I have a very difficult time with tefillah, but I'm not a verbal person, and I'm not a singer. People who are musical and verbal can perhaps relate to these things. I can't. I don't try. And I think that Judaism provides a whole range of options for all different kinds of people. Also, I think the thing is that you can have to see it in a new way. You have to try to redefine it. I'm talking about tzitzis. Most people don't see tzitzis like I do. And so I don't see it as a limitation. I see it as a wonderful metaphor, you know, and I can play with it, you know, and I like. You know, I can see talus stripes as zebras in the zoo, as barcodes in the supermarket. I mean, if you could start playing with these things in this way, it become creative. Sometimes it's hard, like you're saying. It's very difficult to do that. And some things become, more difficult for some people than others. For instance, I said, tefillah for me in that way is a very different. But I can translate the tefillah into colors and patterns. You see, when I translate it into colors and patterns, I can get other kinds of things. And so it's a different. But different people have to find other ways to deal with these things. I also think we're at a time now in Jewish history that's monumental. It's a time like biblical times right now. We're living in. We're sitting in Yerushalayim. I'm talking. It's unbelievable. And it's funny. We're mostly all descendants of Kalev. You realize that all of the Jews were asked to die in the desert. Only Kalev really had the Ruach Hashem and could see what happened. Kalev was of what Shevet? He was Shevet Yehudah. We were mostly from Shevet Yehudah. We're Jews. The other tribes we sort of lost along the way. Maybe we had a little Benjamin that was mixed in with Yehudah. Other ones we just lost. Maybe we find some of them now, the Ethiopians, who they say is tribe of Dan, and now we find some Menashe in India or whatever. But basically, we're sitting in this room, except for the Levi and Cohen, who was a tribe that wasn't one of the Meraglim. They didn't go in and say anything. They weren't involved in this whole Meraglim thing. They were left out. But in fact, thousands of years later, the ones who really get into Eretz Israel are the descendants of Kalev, but I think that we have this monumental experience right now of being together now in Eretz Israel and recreating. We have a number of monumental happenings we have in the 20th century that really are. I think that we obviously have the rebirth of the Jewish state in Israel after thousands of years, and the finding a society in which a foreign society in which we feel at home and comfortable and are honored, like the United States. The experience of the Jew in America is unlike any experience that the Jews ever had anywhere. It's a new kind of thing that we experience in America now, and the Holocaust. These are monumental things in Jewish history that we have that are in our time, in my lifetime, and I see that we had. Judaism in the temple times was one kind of Judaism. If the Yavna crowd, didn't create another Judaism to survive without Jewish sovereignty and without the temple, the Jewish people would have been finished, like the 10 tribes that were finished with the Northern Kingdom. The Southern Kingdom, when it fell, 2.5 centuries later, would have been the end. The Jews lost the temple, lost the sovereignty. That would have been the end, just like it was the end of the Northern Kingdom of Israel. The kingdom of Judea would have been the end. If not for the crowd in Yavne who said, okay, let's rethink this whole thing and let's make a Judaism that doesn't need sovereignty or the temple. And rabbinic Judaism you know, maybe they thought it was going to be for half a century they're developing something, because after the destruction of the first temple, we came back pretty quickly, you know. I mean, Cyrus and all, what was that, 50 some odd years? I mean, it wasn't, weren't counting on 2,000 years, but it worked for 2,000 years and kept us alive. But now we're at a very different time. I see a new Judaism evolving, a third kind of Judaism that will evolve out of this experience, out of the idea, out of the experience of the return to Eretz Israel, out of and out of our relationship to the wider world in a way that we hadn't encountered before in America. I think Europe is still in its anti-Semitic kind of mode, but America is a different place, a different kind of thing. It was founded on principles of Torah. I mean, just read, you know, it was interesting that the story of the original proposal for the logo of the United States, right? In July 4th, 1776, the first meeting of Congress, they appointed a committee to find a logo for this new country, the United States of America. And they appointed a pretty high-powered committee. They appointed 3 guys to do the logo. 2 of them who were good at art, you know, could draw pictures and stuff like that. One of them was called Thomas Jefferson, and we know he was an architect. Benjamin Franklin, who was a printer and engraver. You know, the third one wasn't an artist. Was Henry Adams, John Adams. You know, and you know, John Adams was the second president of the United States. Thomas Jefferson was the third president of the United States. Benjamin Franklin. I mean, this is a pretty high-powered group. And they came back to the next meeting of the Congress with their proposal. You know what their proposal is? Well, look in the congressional record, which, you know, they have a nice. You can look at the seal of America. If you look on the internet, in the U.S. government has the story, and they show this the logo. It's Moses standing with his hand on a hill, you know, with sun rays on him, with the Red Sea split, and Pharaoh with the King of England's crown, with his sword drawn in a chariot, getting the water pouring out over him. That's what that was the symbol of the United States of America. You'd see on Mitzrayim was the symbol, you know, of you know, and you know the famous letter of George Washington to the Touro Synagogue at the Savannah and stuff like that. I mean, America is a place that the Jews, to its good and bad. I mean, we have all the problems of assimilation. We have no pisun,
antibodies,
inoculation against being loved. Right? And we've always, for 2,000 years, we learned how to cope with people, our neighbors who hated us. You know, what happens when you come and your neighbors love you? And you have all the intermarriage and all. When I was in Seattle doing this Four Corners thing, it was interesting. The Seattle Times, they had an article that talked about non-Jewish men who would lie to their dates to tell them they were Jewish because it was chic to go out with a Jewish man. And so, what do we have where people would make believe they're Jewish? I mean, who wants to be Jewish? You know, and you have this kind of experience that. So I think that out of and this return to Eretz Israel, the complexity of of functioning here, we have to collect the garbage, fight the wars. You know, how do we do this? How do we find spirituality in all of the everyday complexity of this society, of all of the, you know, and this. I mean, we have a new kind of, you know, and I think the other kinds of Judaism, so all Galut Judaisms, all of them, Orthodox Judaism, Conservative Judaism, Reform, Reconstruction, whatever, all of them are irrelevant to today, either here or America. I think none of them answer the question. And I think if you look, maybe I'll give you a little Torah. I like, you know, I always read the Torah in a visual way. I mean, you know,